Have you ever wondered why some of the things you desire most seem to move farther away the more desperately you try to bring them into your life? Perhaps you have imagined a different future. You have prayed for change, pictured a new beginning, or quietly asked life to show you another way. And yet, after all that hoping and searching, you may still find yourself standing in the same place, wondering what you are doing wrong. What if you are not doing anything wrong? What if the deepest power of manifestation has very little to do with forcing something to happen and everything to do with discovering what is happening within you? There comes a time when trying harder becomes exhausting. You grow tired of watching for signs. You become weary of wondering when your life will finally change. You look at other people and imagine that somehow they have discovered a secret that you have missed. They seem to move forward while you feel suspended between where you have been and where you desperately want to go. And beneath all of this may be a quiet fear that you rarely speak aloud. What if life has forgotten me? But perhaps life has not forgotten you at all. Perhaps you have simply been looking outward for something that can only begin inward. Many of us have been taught to think of manifestation as a way of getting life to cooperate with our desires. We imagine the relationship, the healing, the sense of purpose, the peaceful future. Then we wait for the outer world to rearrange itself so that we can finally feel whole. We tell ourselves, when this changes, I will relax. When that person understands me, I will feel loved. When I know what comes next, I will trust. When this uncertainty ends, I will be at peace. Without realizing it, we make peace conditional. And whenever peace depends upon a condition, fear is never very far away. The ego loves conditions. It tells you that something outside of you must be different before something inside of you can become whole. It whispers that you need another person's approval before you can feel worthy, certainty before you can trust, an apology before you can forgive, and evidence before you can believe that life is still carrying you somewhere meaningful. Yet there is another part of you beneath that voice. It is quieter. It does not argue. It does not rush. It does not spend every moment asking whether life is unfolding according to schedule. It simply waits beneath the noise, like the stillness at the bottom of the ocean while waves move across the surface. You may have touched this place before. Perhaps you felt it while watching the evening sky when, for a few moments, you forgot what you were worried about. Perhaps it came during a quiet walk when your thoughts suddenly became less important than the trees around you. Perhaps you felt it after forgiving someone you had carried in your heart for years and discovered that the person being released was you. In moments like these, nothing outside of you may have changed, and yet everything felt different. This is where a deeper understanding of manifestation can begin. It may not begin with asking, how do I get what I want? It may begin with asking, what am I bringing to this moment? Am I bringing fear or trust? Am I bringing resentment or forgiveness? Am I bringing the desperate belief that something is missing? Or am I bringing an awareness that there is already something whole and sacred within me? These are not questions you need to answer perfectly. They are simply invitations to notice. Imagine holding a seed in your hand. You know that something extraordinary is contained within it. Even though you cannot see the flower or the tree it may someday become. You place it into the earth. You give it water and light, but you do not dig it up every morning to see whether it is growing. You do not shout at the soil because nothing has appeared yet. You participate in the process, and then you allow something greater than your own effort to do what you cannot do. There is wisdom in that. And perhaps there are places in your own life where you have planted a seed but have never allowed yourself to stop digging it up. You keep asking when. You keep asking how. You keep wondering whether you should have chosen differently. You compare your timing with someone else's. You revisit conversations that have already ended. You rehearse possible futures as though worrying about tomorrow could somehow protect you from it. The mind calls this preparation. But sometimes it is simply fear trying to disguise itself as control. What would happen if, just for this moment, you did not need to know? Not forever, just now. What if you allowed this breath to be enough? You might begin to notice that your deepest suffering is not always caused by what is happening. Sometimes it comes from the argument you are having with what is happening. Life says, this is where you are, while the ego says, I should already be somewhere else. Life says, this relationship has changed, while the ego says, it was not supposed to change. Life says, you do not know what comes next, while the ego insists, I cannot be peaceful until I know. And so you struggle against the river, but the river continues flowing. There may be another possibility. You can have intentions without turning them into demands. You can dream without making your happiness dependent upon the dream arriving in exactly the form you imagined. You can move toward healing while accepting where you are today. You can open yourself to love without believing another person must complete you. This is not giving up on life. It is learning how to participate in life without trying to control every current. When you begin to understand manifestation this way, something subtle changes. Instead of asking the universe to prove that you are supported, you begin discovering support in the present moment. Instead of waiting for love, you ask where love can move through you today. Instead of chasing peace, you notice the thoughts and resentments that prevent you from recognizing the peace already beneath them. You begin shifting from wanting life to become different toward becoming different in your relationship with life. And that is a very different kind of power. Consider someone who has hurt you. Perhaps years have passed, yet a single memory can still awaken anger inside you. Part of you may believe that your peace depends upon what this person does next. They must understand. They must regret it. They must apologize. But while you wait for them to change, your inner world remains connected to the wound. Forgiveness offers another possibility, not because what happened was acceptable, and not because you must invite harmful behavior back into your life. Forgiveness can simply mean that you are no longer willing to make your peace dependent upon someone else's transformation. You release them from the responsibility of healing your inner world. And in doing so, you begin reclaiming something that was always yours. This is manifestation at a much deeper level. You are no longer attempting to rearrange another human being so that you can experience peace. You are becoming willing to uncover peace within yourself. The same is true of uncertainty. You may be standing at a point in your life where you cannot see very far ahead. Something may have ended. Something you expected did not happen. A familiar identity may no longer fit you. You may feel as though you are walking through fog. The ego interprets this as danger because the ego wants a map. But your deeper self may not need the entire map. It may only need enough light for the next step. A tree does not need to know what next spring will look like before releasing its leaves in autumn. The river does not need to see the ocean before moving toward it. Nature seems to contain a quiet willingness to participate in change without demanding guarantees. Perhaps some of that wisdom lives in you too. Maybe manifestation is not asking life to remove every uncertainty. Maybe it is becoming so rooted in the presence within you that uncertainty no longer has the power to steal your peace. And then a beautiful question begins to emerge. If you were no longer trying to manifest from fear, what would you choose? If you no longer believed that you were incomplete, what would you ask life to express through you? If you trusted that your worth could not be increased by receiving something or decreased by losing something, how differently would you walk through your days? You do not need to answer immediately. Simply allow those questions to rest within you. Because beneath all the things you believe you are trying to manifest, perhaps there is one deeper longing. You want to remember that you are safe within yourself. You want to remember that you belong to life. You want to remember that love has not abandoned you and that the source from which you came has never truly been separate from you. Maybe what you have been searching for is not another possession, another person, another sign, or another guarantee. Maybe you have been searching for yourself. And perhaps the real mystery of manifestation begins when you stop asking how to make the world give you what you need and become quiet enough to discover who is doing the asking. Because once you begin to see that clearly, you may discover that the life you have been trying so hard to create outside of yourself has been waiting patiently and silently for you to meet it within. Once you begin to notice who is doing the asking, something very important becomes visible. You begin to see that there are different voices within you. One voice is quiet and patient. It does not need to prove anything. It does not insist that life follow a particular schedule. And then there is another voice, often louder and more urgent, that constantly measures, compares, predicts, worries, and demands. This is the voice of the ego. And much of what we call frustration with manifestation begins when we mistake this voice for who we truly are. The ego is not something you need to fight. Fighting it simply gives it another reason to remain active. You can begin by observing it with kindness. Notice how quickly it turns a simple desire into a condition for happiness. You may wish for companionship, and the ego says, I cannot be whole until someone chooses me. You may desire healing, and it says, I cannot be peaceful while this pain exists. You may long for clarity about your purpose, and it says, until I know exactly where I am going, my life has no meaning. The desire itself may be innocent, The suffering begins with the condition attached to it. This distinction can change the way you understand manifestation. There is a difference between holding an intention and clinging to an outcome. Intention can be spacious. It says, this is what my heart feels drawn toward, and I am willing to participate in its unfolding. Attachment says, this must happen in this way at this time, or something is wrong. One comes from openness, the other comes from fear. Perhaps you have experienced this in relationships. You care deeply about someone, and naturally, you hope the relationship will continue, but slowly, without noticing it, love becomes mixed with fear. You begin watching their behavior more carefully. A delayed message creates anxiety. A change in tone becomes something to analyze. You wonder whether you are enough. You begin adjusting yourself to keep the relationship safe. Soon you are no longer simply loving another person, you are trying to manage the future. The ego calls this protection, but love does not need to control another person in order to exist. You may begin to ask yourself whether the relationship is allowing you to express love or whether fear of losing it has caused you to abandon yourself. This question does not tell you whether to stay or leave. It simply returns your attention to the place where your freedom actually lives, within your own awareness. When you notice yourself trying to control another person's feelings, you can become still for a moment. You can recognize the fear beneath the control. Perhaps it is the fear of abandonment. Perhaps it is the old belief that being rejected means being unworthy. Instead of immediately acting from that fear, you can allow yourself to feel it without becoming it. There is great freedom in realizing fear is present in me, but fear is not all that I am. Awareness creates space. And in that space, another response becomes possible. The same pattern appears in comparison. You may look at someone else's life and immediately begin measuring your own. They seem more certain, more loved, more spiritually grounded. Their life appears to be moving while yours seems to be standing still. The ego loves comparison because comparison keeps your attention focused on what appears to be missing. But you are comparing two lives that have never traveled the same road. Imagine standing in a garden and becoming angry with a rose because it opened before another flower. Nature does not seem embarrassed by different timing. The tree does not look toward the flower and wonder why it cannot bloom in the same way. Each expression of life follows its own rhythm. Could you offer yourself the same permission? Your life may be in a season that does not look impressive from the outside. Perhaps you are healing. Perhaps you are learning to be alone without feeling abandoned. Perhaps you are releasing an identity that once gave you certainty. Perhaps something inside you is quietly taking root. Roots are invisible, yet without them, nothing can stand. Sometimes what feels like a delay is actually a period of deep preparation. Not because life is withholding something from you, but because there are inner attachments asking to be seen. You may believe you are waiting for circumstances to change when, at another level, you are learning how not to make your peace dependent upon circumstances. This is why forcing manifestation can become so exhausting. When you believe that your happiness exists somewhere in the future, the present moment becomes merely an obstacle between you and the life you want. You stop inhabiting today. You live mentally in tomorrow. And tomorrow never arrives as tomorrow. When it arrives, it is another present moment. If you have trained yourself to overlook the present, even receiving what you once wanted may not give you the peace you imagined. The ego will simply find another condition. You may recognize this pattern. There was once something you believed would finally make everything feel right. Perhaps you received it. For a while, you felt relief. Then another concern appeared, another desire, another uncertainty. This does not mean desire is wrong. It means external conditions were never designed to carry the entire weight of your inner peace. The ego keeps moving the finish line because its survival depends upon convincing you that you are not yet complete. Your true self whispers something very different. It says that you can grow without believing you are deficient. You can desire change without rejecting the present. You can move towards something beautiful without turning the absence of it into evidence that something is wrong with you. There is an enormous difference between saying, I would love to experience this, and saying, I need this before I can love my life. One leaves the heart open. The other makes life a negotiation. Control often grows from this negotiation. You create an image of how things should unfold. The right person should behave in a certain way. Your healing should happen by a certain time. Your family should understand you. Your spiritual journey should feel peaceful. Your future should become clear. Then life does what life has always done. It moves. People change. Plans dissolve. Doors close. Bodies age. Children grow. Relationships evolve. Seasons turn. What once felt permanent reveals itself to be temporary. The ego experiences this movement as a threat because it wants permanence in a world of change. But perhaps your deeper self understands something the ego cannot. You were never meant to control the river. You were meant to learn how to move with it. This does not mean becoming passive. It does not mean ignoring your intuition or allowing others to mistreat you. You still make choices. You still create boundaries. You still speak honestly. You still take steps toward what feels aligned. But you begin acting without demanding that life guarantee the result. Imagine holding water in your hands. If your hands remain gently cupped, the water can rest there. But if you become frightened of losing it and squeeze tightly, the very action meant to keep it causes it to escape. Many of us hold life this way. We grip relationships because we fear losing love. We grip old identities because we fear not knowing who we will become. We grip resentment because we fear that letting it go will mean what happened did not matter. We grip plans because uncertainty feels unbearable. And then we wonder why we feel exhausted. Perhaps the exhaustion is not coming entirely from life. Perhaps some of it comes from the gripping. You might notice this the next time something does not go according to plan. Before asking, how can I fix this, you might quietly ask, what am I afraid will happen if I cannot control this? That question can take you beneath the surface. Maybe you are afraid you will be alone. Maybe you are afraid you will disappoint someone. Maybe you are afraid you are running out of time. Maybe you are afraid that if this door closes, another will never open. Fear often speaks in final sentences. This will never change. I will always feel this way. I have missed my chance. There is nothing ahead. But fear cannot see the future. It is usually describing the past. It gathers old experiences and projects them onto tomorrow. If you were rejected before, it predicts rejection again. If you failed before, it tells you not to trust yourself. If you were hurt in love, it warns you against opening your heart. Awareness allows you to hear these predictions without automatically accepting them. You can say inwardly, I understand why this fear is here. There is compassion in that response. You do not have to shame yourself for being afraid. You do not need to pretend to be spiritually peaceful when you are hurting. Genuine inner peace does not come from denying your human emotions. It comes from allowing them to move through you without giving them permanent ownership of your identity. You can feel anxious without becoming an anxious identity. You can experience rejection without becoming unworthy. You can experience loss without becoming empty. You can be uncertain without being lost. This is one of the most powerful shifts in awareness. What happens to you is an experience. What the ego says the experience means about you is a story. And stories can be examined. Perhaps someone left your life. The event is painful. But then the mind adds, people always leave me. I am difficult to love. I will never find connection again. Now you are carrying not only the loss, but an identity built around the loss. Manifestation from that identity becomes complicated because every new possibility passes through the old story. Someone offers affection, and you look for signs that they will leave. A new opportunity appears, and you search for reasons it will fail. You may think life keeps repeating itself. Sometimes it is your unexamined story that keeps repeating itself. This is why awareness is so important. You cannot release what you refuse to see. And you do not need to judge what you discover. Think of awareness as light entering a dark room. The light does not argue with the darkness. It simply reveals what was already there. When you bring awareness to resentment, you begin seeing how much energy is required to carry it. When you bring awareness to people-pleasing, you may notice how often you trade authenticity for approval. When you bring awareness to comparison, you see how quickly another person's life becomes evidence against your own. Nothing needs to be condemned. It simply needs to be seen. There may be someone in your life whose approval you have been trying to manifest for years. Perhaps it is a parent who never fully understood you. Perhaps it is a partner whose affection feels inconsistent. Perhaps it is an audience, a group, or even an imagined version of society. You keep becoming more agreeable, more useful, more impressive, more accommodating. And somewhere along the way, you lose contact with your own inner voice. Then one day you may ask a simple question. If nobody were judging this choice, what would feel peaceful and true to me? The answer might surprise you. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is quiet. Your true self rarely needs to shout. It has been there beneath the performance all along. The more you return to that inner presence, the less desperate you become for the outer world to confirm your worth. You may still appreciate love and recognition. You may still feel hurt when someone misunderstands you, but their response no longer defines the entire landscape of your inner life. You begin to realize that another person's inability to see your worth does not remove it. A cloud passing across the sun does not extinguish the sun. It only hides it for a while. And perhaps your fears, judgments, resentments, and old stories are like those clouds. They can feel enormous when you are inside them. Yet behind them there remains something untouched, something aware, something quiet, something that has survived every version of you. You were there before the heartbreak. You were there before the disappointment. You were there before someone told you who you were supposed to become. You were there before you learned to compare yourself. And you are still here. This deeper presence does not need to manifest worth because it is already worthy. It does not need to manifest wholeness because wholeness is its nature. What it may be asking you to manifest is an outer life that increasingly reflects the peace, love, and truth you are remembering within. That changes the question completely. Instead of asking, how do I attract love, perhaps you begin asking, where am I withholding love from myself or others? Instead of asking, how do I manifest peace, perhaps you ask, what argument with life am I willing to release? Instead of asking, how do I make the future happen, perhaps you ask, what loving step is available to me now? This is where intention becomes beautiful. Intention does not have to be a demand sent into the universe. It can be a direction you choose within consciousness. You can intend to meet this day with less judgment. You can intend to listen more deeply. You can intend to notice when fear begins writing tomorrow's story. You can intend to return to love when the ego invites you into conflict. And when you forget, as every human being does, you can begin again. There is no spiritual failure in forgetting. The remembering is the practice. Little by little, you may notice that manifestation is becoming less about controlling circumstances and more about becoming available to life. You are no longer standing at the river shouting instructions about where it should turn. You are listening to the water. You are learning its movement. You are discovering when to swim and when to float. And something remarkable begins happening when you stop fighting every current. You have energy again. The energy once consumed by resistance becomes available for awareness, compassion, creativity, connection, and love. You begin seeing possibilities that fear had hidden from you. Not because the universe suddenly changed its mind about you, because you changed the place from which you were looking, and this may be the doorway into an even deeper part of manifestation. For once you recognize the ego's need to control, compare, cling, and protect, another question naturally appears. If I am not the frightened voice trying to manage everything, then who am I beneath it? The answer cannot be forced. It is not another concept to collect. It is something you begin to remember when resentment softens, when judgment becomes quiet, when forgiveness enters, and when you stop demanding that life prove itself before you are willing to trust it. And perhaps this is where the real return begins. Not a journey toward becoming someone more powerful, but a gentle journey back to the self that never needed power over life in the first place. When you begin to ask who you are beneath the frightened voice that wants to manage everything, you may notice something surprising. The answer does not arrive as another thought. It comes more like a quiet recognition. There is a presence within you that has been watching every chapter of your life. It was there when you were uncertain. It was there when you were loved and when you felt rejected. It was there when your plans succeeded and when they disappeared. Circumstances changed, relationships changed, your body changed, your beliefs changed, and yet something within you remained aware of all of it. Perhaps this quiet awareness is closer to your true self than any story you have ever told about who you are. And perhaps returning to this self is the deepest form of manifestation. You do not create this presence. You uncover it. You do not earn it. You remember it. Like the sky behind passing clouds, it has never disappeared simply because fear, resentment, or uncertainty temporarily filled your awareness. This is why letting go can feel so powerful. You are not becoming empty when you release what no longer serves you. You are making room to recognize what was already there. One of the heaviest things we carry is resentment, Sometimes we carry it so long that we no longer realize how much of our inner world has been organized around an old wound. Someone betrayed you. Someone failed to protect you. Someone misunderstood you at a time when you desperately needed to be understood. Years may pass, yet the mind can return to that moment as though it happened yesterday. You may imagine that holding the pain somehow honors what happened. You may fear that forgiveness would mean saying it did not matter, but forgiveness does not have to mean that. You can acknowledge that something hurt you deeply and still choose not to carry it into every tomorrow. Imagine walking through life carrying a heavy stone because someone once placed it in your hands. At first, you remember exactly why you are carrying it. Years later, you may have forgotten how it began, but your hands are still closed around the weight. Forgiveness is opening your hands. The past does not disappear. What happened does not become right. But the weight no longer has to travel everywhere with you. And something important happens when your hands are no longer occupied with what wounded you. They become available to receive life again. Perhaps this is one reason forgiveness and manifestation belong together. If your heart is continually rehearsing betrayal, it becomes difficult to meet new relationships without suspicion. If you are constantly reliving failure, new possibilities may be filtered through the expectation of disappointment. If you carry resentment toward life itself, you may quietly believe that existence is against you. Forgiveness creates space. Sometimes the person who most needs your forgiveness is yourself. You may still be punishing yourself for choices you made when you knew less than you know now. You remember the relationship you stayed in too long, the opportunity you did not take, the words you wish you could retrieve, the years you believe you wasted. The ego looks backward with today's awareness and condemns yesterday's self for not possessing it. But perhaps compassion offers another way. The person you were then was navigating life with a consciousness, fears, wounds, and understanding available at that time. This does not mean avoiding responsibility. You can acknowledge mistakes. You can make amends where possible. You can learn. But learning does not require lifelong self-punishment. A tree does not apologize for the branches that grew toward darkness. It simply turns toward light when light becomes available. Perhaps you can do the same. You can say, I would choose differently now, and then choose differently now. There is tremendous freedom in this because the present is the only place where transformation can actually occur. You cannot return to yesterday and become wiser there. You can only bring today's awareness into this moment. And this moment is enough. When you begin forgiving yourself, your intentions change. You are no longer trying to create a new life as an escape from a person you dislike. You begin creating from acceptance. This is a subtle but profound difference. If you are trying to manifest change because you hate who you are now, then even your beautiful intentions carry the energy of rejection. Somewhere underneath the desire is the message, this version of me is not enough. But what if transformation did not require rejecting yourself? What if you could love the person standing here while still allowing life to unfold into something new? A seed does not despise itself for not yet being a tree. It contains the tree without condemning the seed. Perhaps your future exists within you in much the same way. Not as a fixed destiny that you must force into existence, but as possibility waiting for the right conditions of awareness, love, intention, and trust. This brings us to surrender. Surrender is often misunderstood because the ego hears the word and imagines defeat. It imagines giving up, becoming passive, or allowing life to happen without participation. But spiritual surrender can mean something very different. It can mean doing what feels loving and aligned while releasing your demand to know exactly what the result must be. You still plant the seed. You still water it. You still place it where light can reach it. But you stop pulling at the stem because you are impatient for it to grow. There may be something in your life right now that you have been pulling at. A relationship, a decision, a dream, an answer. You have thought about it from every possible angle. You have replayed conversations. You have imagined outcomes. You have asked for signs. Perhaps your mind has become so busy trying to solve the future that you can barely hear the quiet wisdom of the present. What if, for a little while, you stopped pulling? What if you allowed yourself to say, I have done what I know to do with love. I am willing to let the next step reveal itself. There is peace in that sentence. Not because you know what will happen, because you no longer require knowing in order to breathe. Trust begins there. Trust does not mean believing that every circumstance will match your preferences. Life may still surprise you. People may still leave. Plans may still change. There may still be seasons you would never have chosen. Trust can simply mean believing that you do not lose your deepest self when circumstances change. You can meet what comes. You can listen. You can respond. You can begin again. This kind of trust is much stronger than certainty because certainty depends upon knowing the future. Trust can exist in the dark. Imagine walking beneath a night sky with only a small lantern. The lantern does not illuminate the entire road. It shows only the next few steps. The ego complains, that is not enough. Show me the whole journey. But life often answers with another invitation. Take the step you can see. Perhaps you do not know what your purpose will look like 5 years from now, but you may know what kindness looks like today. Perhaps you do not know whether a relationship will last forever, but you can know whether you are being honest and loving within it today. Perhaps you do not know how your healing will unfold, but you may know that you can stop speaking to yourself as though you are your own enemy. The next loving step is often enough. This is where intention becomes less about manipulating the future and more about choosing how you wish to meet the present. You might begin the morning not by asking, what can I get today, but by asking, what can move through me today? Can patience move through you? Can compassion? Can forgiveness? Can courage? Can silence? Can love? If you think of the source as an infinite field of love, wisdom, creativity, and presence, then living in harmony with the source may not require convincing it to give you something. It may simply involve removing the inner barriers that prevent those qualities from being expressed through you. Resentment blocks love. Constant judgment blocks understanding. Fear blocks trust. The need to control blocks surrender, but you do not remove these barriers through violence against yourself. You bring awareness to them gently and repeatedly, and they begin losing their authority. A garden does not become beautiful because the gardener screams at the weeds. The gardener notices what is growing, tends the soil, removes what is no longer needed, waters what is life-giving, and trusts a process larger than personal control. Your inner world is much like that garden. What are you watering each day? This is not a question meant to make you monitor every thought. That would simply become another form of control. You will have fearful thoughts. You will have moments of anger. You will sometimes compare yourself. You will forget what you know. The invitation is simply to notice what you continually return to. If a fearful thought appears, you do not have to water it with an hour of imagined catastrophe. If resentment appears, you do not have to water it by replaying the entire injury. If comparison appears, you do not have to water it by building a case against your own life. You can notice, you can breathe, and you can return. This returning may be the spiritual practice hidden within manifestation. You return from fear to love, from judgment to understanding, from control to trust, from the noise of the ego to the silence of your deeper self, again and again. Not perfectly, gently. Over time, the place you return to begins to feel more like home, and then manifestation begins to take on another meaning. You stop asking only what you want life to bring to you and become interested in what your life is expressing. Perhaps you say you want love. Then you notice whether love is present in the way you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. Perhaps you say you want peace. Then you notice how often you willingly enter arguments that cannot give you peace. Perhaps you say you want freedom. Then you notice the old resentment you keep choosing to revisit. This is not about blaming yourself for your circumstances. Many things happened that you did not choose and could not control. Spiritual awareness should never become another way of accusing yourself for pain. It is about recognizing where your freedom begins. Your freedom begins in your relationship with what has happened. Two people can stand beneath the same rain. One curses the sky. The other listens to the sound of water. The rain is the same. Their inner relationship with the rain is different. You may not control every storm, but you can gradually become aware of the consciousness you bring into it. This is why love becomes central. Love does not mean pretending everything is beautiful. Love sees pain clearly. Love allows boundaries. Love can say no. Love can walk away from what is harmful. But love does not need hatred to protect itself. When you begin living from love, you stop asking, how can I defeat what I fear? And begin asking, what would love see here that fear cannot? Perhaps fear sees rejection, while love sees redirection. Fear sees an ending, while love recognizes space for another beginning. Fear sees aging as loss, while love notices the depth that only time can give. Fear sees uncertainty as emptiness, while love sees an unwritten page. This does not mean every loss secretly feels good. Grief is real. Heartbreak is real. There are seasons when the most spiritual thing you can do may simply be to allow yourself to cry without demanding an immediate lesson. Even then, love can sit beside you. It does not hurry your healing. It does not tell you to become positive. It whispers, you are allowed to be human. And perhaps this tenderness toward yourself is part of returning to the source. You may have spent years believing spiritual growth meant becoming someone who never feels afraid, angry, lonely, or uncertain. But perhaps awakening is not becoming less human. Perhaps it is becoming more compassionate toward your humanity while remembering that no temporary emotion contains the whole truth of who you are. You are the awareness that can notice the emotion. You are the spacious sky in which the weather moves. Some days there are clouds. Some days there are storms. Some days the sky seems endless and blue, but the sky does not become the storm, and neither do you. The more deeply you remember this, the less desperately you need manifestation to rescue you from yourself. You no longer say, give me this so I can finally be whole. You begin saying, let me meet life from the wholeness I am remembering. That is a different prayer. It carries less demand and more openness. And perhaps this is when you become available to possibilities you could never have planned. Think of a river approaching a fallen tree. The river does not sit beside the obstacle, forever insisting that the tree move. It finds another opening. It curves. It changes direction while remaining faithful to its movement toward the sea. There may be places where your life is asking you to do the same. You thought the path had to go through one particular person, one particular answer, one particular future. Then something blocked the way. The ego says everything is ruined. But your deeper self may ask, is there another opening? Sometimes manifestation looks like receiving what you imagined. Sometimes it looks like being freed from what you were convinced you needed. You may not know the difference while it is happening. This is why trust matters. Years later, you may look back at a closed door and realize how much of your life became possible because it closed. The relationship that ended taught you to stop abandoning yourself. The season of loneliness introduced you to your own company. The uncertainty that frightened you forced you to listen inwardly instead of following everyone else's expectations. You would never have manifested those experiences deliberately, yet they became part of your awakening. So perhaps the question is no longer simply, how can I make life give me what I want? Perhaps it becomes, how can I remain open enough to recognize what life is trying to show me? There is humility in this. There is also freedom. You can still have dreams. You can still hold intentions. You can still imagine beautiful possibilities, but now you hold them with open hands. You say, this is what I feel called toward. I will walk toward it with love. I will listen. I will participate. And I will not sacrifice my inner peace trying to force the universe to follow my plan. This is not weakness. It may be one of the deepest forms of strength, because now your peace does not belong to the outcome. Your peace belongs to you. And as that realization settles more deeply into your life, gratitude begins to arise in a very natural way. Not gratitude used as a technique to get something. Not gratitude performed because you hope the universe will reward you. Simply gratitude. You begin noticing the breath moving through you, the morning light entering a room, the voice of someone you love, a quiet meal, a tree moving in the wind. The fact that after everything you have lived through, you are still here. You stop treating the present moment as merely a waiting room for a better future. You begin living inside it. And something that once seemed ordinary becomes sacred. Perhaps this is the hidden power of manifestation. When you stop postponing your wholeness until life changes, you become available to the life already here. You begin recognizing love instead of endlessly searching for proof of it. You begin noticing guidance instead of demanding certainty. You begin feeling connected to the source, not as something distant that must be persuaded, but as a presence quietly expressing itself through every conscious breath. Then you understand that you were never truly trying to manifest a perfect life. You were trying to find your way home. And home was not waiting somewhere in the future. It was beneath the fear, beneath the resentment, beneath the need to control, beneath every identity you thought you had to defend. It was the quiet awareness that remained when you stopped struggling long enough to notice it. From this place, you can still move forward. You can still create, choose, love, dream, and begin again. But now your movement comes from fullness rather than desperation. And perhaps the final invitation is learning how to carry this awareness into ordinary life, not only in moments of silence, but when you wake tomorrow morning, when someone disappoints you, when fear returns, when an old wound asks for your attention, and when the future once again becomes uncertain. Because remembering who you are once can be beautiful. Learning to return to that remembrance each day is where it begins to become a way of living. And so the question becomes very simple. How do you live this remembrance when ordinary life begins again? How do you remain connected to this deeper awareness when the morning arrives with responsibilities, when someone says something that hurts you, when an old fear returns, or when life once again refuses to follow the plan you had created? Perhaps you do not need to remain perfectly peaceful. Perhaps you only need to remember that you can return. Every morning offers you this invitation. Before you reach for the worries of yesterday or begin negotiating with tomorrow, you can spend a few quiet moments simply being present. You do not need an elaborate ritual. You might sit in silence and notice your breathing. You might look through a window and watch the morning light. You might place your attention on the stillness beneath your thoughts. For a moment, there is nothing to manifest, nothing to fix, nothing to prove. There is simply life moving through you. From that stillness, you might gently ask yourself, what do I want to bring into this day? Not what do I want to get, but what do I want to bring? Perhaps you want to bring patience into a difficult conversation. Perhaps you want to bring compassion into the way you speak to yourself. Perhaps you want to bring forgiveness to an old memory. Perhaps you simply want to move more slowly and notice when fear begins trying to control what has not happened yet. This is intention in its quietest form. You are not giving orders to life. You are choosing the consciousness from which you will meet life. And when you forget, you begin again. You may leave your peaceful morning and become irritated 10 minutes later. Someone may disappoint you. Traffic may slow you down. An unexpected message may awaken anxiety. The ego may return immediately with its familiar stories. This does not mean your spiritual practice has failed. The moment you notice what is happening, awareness has already returned. You can pause. You can feel your feet on the ground. You can notice your breathing. And perhaps you can ask, am I responding to what is actually happening? Or am I responding to the story fear is creating about it? That small space between awareness and reaction can become a doorway to freedom. Some days you will walk through that doorway easily. Other days you may recognize it only after you have reacted. Be gentle with yourself then. You are not trying to become spiritually perfect. You are remembering again and again. Gratitude can help you remember. Not gratitude as a bargain with the universe, not a technique designed to attract more, simply the willingness to notice what is already here. There may be something extraordinary about realizing that your life is happening now. This cup of tea, this breath, this conversation, this quiet room, this person sitting beside you, this body that has carried you through every chapter of your story. So much of life can disappear into the background while the mind waits for something more important to happen. Gratitude brings the background forward. It reminds you that peace is often hidden inside what the ego calls ordinary. Forgiveness can become another daily return. You may notice resentment appearing again even after you believed you had released it. That is all right. Some wounds leave slowly. You can simply notice the weight. You can ask yourself, do I want to carry this into another day? Sometimes the answer will be yes because you are not ready yet. Even then, awareness matters. You can hold your pain consciously rather than allowing it to silently shape everything you see. And when you are ready, you can loosen your grip, not for the person who hurt you, for the peace within you. You may also practice releasing the future at the end of each day. There will always be unfinished things, questions without answers, relationships you cannot completely understand, decisions you are still considering. Before sleep, perhaps you can imagine placing them down. You might quietly remind yourself, I do not have to solve tomorrow tonight. There is wisdom in allowing the day to end. The sun does not remain above the horizon because it is worried about tomorrow. It disappears. Night comes, and somehow morning knows how to return. Perhaps trust can be that simple. You do what you can with the awareness available to you, and then you allow life to continue moving beyond your control. Over time, you may discover that manifestation has become something very different from what you once imagined. You may still hold beautiful intentions. You may still dream. You may still visualize possibilities that awaken something joyful within you. But you no longer ask those possibilities to complete you. You meet them from wholeness. You do not say, when love arrives, I will become loving. You practice love now. You do not say, when life becomes certain, I will trust. You practice trust inside uncertainty. You do not say, when everyone understands me, I will finally accept myself. You begin offering yourself acceptance today. And then whatever arrives meets a different version of you. Not a perfect version, a present version. A person who understands that the deepest power was never the ability to command every circumstance. It was the ability to remain connected to love while circumstances changed. Maybe this is what living in harmony with the source feels like. Not receiving constant signs that everything will go your way, but discovering an inner steadiness that does not disappear whenever life takes an unexpected turn. You begin trusting the river without needing to see the ocean. You begin planting seeds without demanding tomorrow's flowers. You begin loving without trying to possess. You begin forgiving without rewriting the past. You begin living without waiting for life to become perfect. And gradually, almost quietly, you realize something. You are lighter. The world may not have rearranged itself exactly as you once demanded. There may still be unanswered questions. There may still be things you hope for, but you are no longer standing outside your own life waiting for permission to enter it. You are here. You are breathing. You are participating. You are listening. And perhaps you can feel that quiet presence beneath everything again. The presence that was there before you learned to fear the future. The presence that existed before you measured yourself against anyone else. The presence beneath every wound, every label, every expectation, every story. You did not create it during this journey. You remembered it. And maybe that is the greatest manifestation of all. Not becoming someone new, but returning to who you were beneath everything that convinced you that you were incomplete. So as you move forward from here, you might carry one gentle question with you. What would this moment look like if I did not need it to complete me? Perhaps you would listen differently. Perhaps you would love more freely. Perhaps you would forgive a little sooner. Perhaps you would stop chasing what is leaving and become available to what is arriving. Perhaps you would trust yourself enough to take the next step without demanding to see the entire road. And perhaps, in the silence beneath all those possibilities, you would recognize something that has been waiting for you all along. You are already connected. You are already part of the river. You are already held within the mystery of life. You do not need to force the source to hear you. You may only need to become quiet enough to hear what has always been speaking within you. Let your intentions come from love. Let your actions come from awareness. Let forgiveness lighten what you no longer need to carry. Let gratitude return you to what is already here. And when fear asks you to control tomorrow, gently return to today. The future will arrive in its own season. For now, this breath is enough. This moment is enough. And perhaps when you stop demanding that life become something else before you can be at peace, you discover that the peace you were trying to manifest was never far away. It was waiting beneath the noise, waiting beneath the fear, waiting within you. If something in this reflection spoke to a place within you that you had forgotten, you are welcome to share what you are beginning to release, trust, or remember in the comments. And if these quiet spiritual journeys help you return to yourself, you can subscribe and continue walking with us. Until then, move gently. Hold your intentions with open hands. Trust what you cannot yet see. And remember that you are not trying to become worthy of the life flowing through you. You are simply learning to stop resisting the love, peace, and wisdom that have been within you all along.